This is Ukraine, one of Europe's larger countries located in the east of the old continent. Home to more than 42 million people, Ukraine is the 8th most populous nation in Europe, but it's also one of its poorest. So, while being one of the few countries that hasn't quite been able to leave the Cold War yet, let's take a look at its economy to see how Ukrainians are getting on. Welcome to the economy of Ukraine. Way before modern Ukraine was a thing, the land it now calls home was considered the breadbasket of Europe for a very long time, even going back to ancient Greece, as mentioned in this book. This is due to the rich, fertile soil known as Chernozem, probably not pronounced like that. On this world map, you can see that a significant portion of this Chernozem soil is found in Ukraine, and it produces some high agricultural yields. This agricultural advantage has given Ukraine strong geopolitical importance throughout the centuries, and has been a great location in which cultures can develop, as back when economies were more agrarian, having high-yielding lands was a big plus. However, to not recap the whole of Ukrainian history here, we'll jump to the last 100 years, when in 1922 Ukraine was a founding member of the USSR, exactly 100 years ago. Just saying. Anyway, the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, as it was formerly known, had a lackluster economy. It is true that capital was mobilized at impressive speeds thanks to these centrally planned policies made in Moscow, but capital needs to be productive, not just mobilized quickly. For example, after the Second World War, food was pretty scarce everywhere in Europe. Even the British didn't formally end their rationing of food until 1954. However, in Ukraine, despite its significantly better terrain for agricultural production and the increase in mechanization, agricultural output was still lower in the early 1950s than the base 1940 level. Many blame this on the re-establishment of collective farms in the country, a policy originally brought in by Stalin in the 1920s, which wasn't very successful back then either, with many historians believing that such policy was a driving cause of the early 1930s USSR famines. But not all was bad though in the Ukrainian economy during its Soviet era. Heavy industry received significant political backing from Moscow. As such, Ukraine saw a healthy amount of inward investment, which resulted in the area becoming a significant producer in per capita terms of steel, iron ore, coal, and much more. However, by the 1970s, growth in the economy began to stagnate, much like across the whole Soviet Union. And when the country got its independence in 1991, the economy tanked. Output fell and inflation rose significantly, making current inflation rates in the US and Europe look like a joke. By the early 2000s, after much of the post-Soviet economic shock had passed, Ukraine showed signs of emerging to become a genuine, respectable economy within Europe, with its agricultural and industrial sectors being well respected. Not bad for a country that still suffers from significant levels of corruption. So, what is Ukraine's economy like today? Will it ever be able to find a tranquil path to economic prosperity? Ukraine's economy is not very influential. It ranks 55th globally in terms of size. Interestingly, it's about the same size as Hungary's economy, a former Soviet satellite state with less than 1/4 Ukraine's population. In terms of living standards, Ukraine consistently competes with Moldova for the undesirable title of poorest country in Europe. Its almost $14,000 per capita places the country 91st globally, which if looked at from a global perspective, means Ukraine is a middle-income economy, which, fun fact, is how the World Bank defines the nation's economy. Now, remember the heavy industry Ukraine excelled at after significant investment under the Soviet era? Well, it still has a large impact on Ukraine's economy today. Not only does industry make up almost 30% of Ukraine's economy, but the middle-income economy is home to an impressive defense industry organized around the state-owned conglomerate Its chemical, mining, and ferrous metal industries also play significant roles within the economy, providing many jobs and make up for a large portion of the nation's exports. In fact, something you may not know is that Ukraine's aerospace industry is home to the production of the world's largest aircraft. That's right, it's not the US, it's not the Russians, it's not the other Europeans, it's the Ukrainians. And it's the Antonov AN-225 Moreira, an example of Ukrainian capabilities that were in part funded during the Soviet era that make Ukraine's economy different to most middle-income economies. But for the most of us, the Soviet-era vibes have definitely disappeared. The Soviet Union is long gone, and the Berlin Wall is down, although you still can't mention the word social when running for president in the USA if you're wearing red. Anyway, Ukraine, on the other hand, may have been independent for the last 30 years, but it's never really left the tug of war that is happening between the East and West. We can't talk about Ukraine's economy without mentioning geopolitics. So let's jump in. What could go wrong? Ukraine currently does not belong in NATO nor the EU, two Western institutions, although it is part of the deep and comprehensive free trade area with the EU, Georgia and Moldova, which gives Ukraine access to the EU's internal market in some sectors. This area has been in force only since 2017. Likewise, Ukraine is also part of the Commonwealth of Independent States Free Trade Area, which is led by Russia, and has been functioning for 10 years. Now, as you may remember, not so long ago, Russia annexed Crimea, and the conflict relating to the annexation resulted in not just the death of thousands of people and 2 years of significant decreases in Ukrainian output, but it also shook the confidence that international investors had in Ukraine, which is key for Ukrainian economic development moving forward. Ukraine is also heavily dependent on imports of natural gas and oil, with Russia being the main supplier. This dependence on a neighbor that Kiev cannot trust has ramifications for its economy, especially with that significant heavy industry that takes place within the country. Ultimately, the geopolitical tensions that are present in Ukraine as a result of a massive international chess game being played out between East and West results in the Ukrainians being the ones who lose out. And I'd recommend watching Adam Something's video about the geopolitical situation in Ukraine to get a full, dedicated video on the matter. So, I want to be positive and say that Ukraine will become another large state like Poland that gets to realize its economic potential that its people and country in general can offer. But this time, I don't feel so positive on the matter. Russia has shown consistently over the last 30 years that Ukraine is a red line in its own national interests, and continued involvement by Putin in Ukrainian affairs is likely to continue, which will prevent Ukraine from realizing its potential. Add this to the fact that Ukraine has been suffering one of the world's fastest shrinking populations since the Soviet Union fell, and it's hard to remain positive on its economic outlook without the issue of geopolitics being resolved. Hi everyone, thanks for watching today's video. Let me know what you think will happen to Ukraine's economy. Are you positive? Let me know in the comment section. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and check out the channel support box below. Otherwise, take care. Bye.